Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the latest 1904 Club Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. And today we've dusted off one of our very, very old relics. No, not Burnsy. Fletch is back.
How do I feel about being described as an antique? I'm not too sure, to be honest, but it might make me very, very expensive. I don't know, Baz. How are you? You all right?
I'm all right, sweetheart. Yeah, I'm recovering from a couple of days in London with the family and two children that want to kill everybody, myself included, and the entire world. I'm looking forward to a day at work where I've not got to manage two small children in the half-term holiday. So anything is better than that, I think.
So what we can say there is we're not small children and we're more behaved. Is that what you're saying? Because that's a great compliment to me and Burnsy.
Yeah, well, I've referred to you both as old relics, so we'll take the positives on that. Burnsy, all right?
Yeah, not bad. As long as we don't get to see Fletcher's Queen Anne legs, we'll be fine on this episode of the Antiques Roadshow. Anyway, I'm okay. Should we get to the football, get to the chat, because there'll be people shouting at their laptops and phones already. Talk football, you settered so-and-sos. Get on with it. So
get it forward.
We'll talk Chelsea, which I really enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game. I know City didn't win. I'm not sure there was a great expectation they would, but I thought it was a good night. And we'll get back to a game that I think has the whiff of crucial about it as they take on QPR on Saturday. And we've got lots of messages coming into the 1904 Club with some varied topics. So I'm sure we'll explore them across the course of the next hour or so.
Yeah, so Chelsea, FA Cup, City, in the end, well beaten by 4 goals to 0, and Chelsea's reward is a trip to Wrexham in round 5. It's quite a nice couple of draws out. Mansfield, one of my old clubs against Arsenal, is a particularly attractive tie. But Fletch, we were all obviously there at the MKM, what feels like a while ago now, on Friday night. They gave a good account of themselves, City, didn't they? Particularly in the first half, and had one or two really, really good moments that you feel had possibly Ollie McBurnie been leading the attack on the night, they might have got themselves in front. And had they have done that, you never know what may have happened. But I think Sergei said after the game that Liam Rossini had approached the game as a Champions League contest. And it's no disgrace, I don't think, with what happened. That was always the fear that if Chelsea went strong, that could happen. They've done it to far better teams this season and over the last couple of years than Hull City. And they took advantage. But they are a good side, aren't they? And they've got, Moses Caicedo is probably worth more than what Adrian Iligella bought Hull City for and has spent since. So just to put it into some kind of context.
Yeah, exactly. I think for Chelsea, the multi-billion-pound side didn't really have to get past 4th gear, perhaps, maybe a gear for each goal, if you like. I think the nature of the game, the first half, trying to break it down, first 10 minutes, very exciting. I thought both teams had a decent chance at either end, and it gave the impression that we were going to see, crash bang wallop football once again. But I think Chelsea's natural ability and class then shone through. I thought Chelsea could have been more than 1-0 up before half time because of Estavo missing when trying to skip past Phillips and putting wide. Delap celebrating before the ball had even hit the back of the net, which I thought was quite funny. Neto took his goal really well. And it was one of those where I was sort of on the left wing of the press area in the Upper West stand, right behind it. And as soon as he struck it with the pace on it, me and former colleague Gareth from the football club sat next to each other, both went, "That's in." And lo and behold, it did. Slightly disappointed with the second goal, if I'm being incredibly harsh. I think, it was a bit soft the way that set piece hit the back of the net. And then Chelsea just, cantered home in the end. But, glimpses. And as you mentioned, Baz, I think the game was crying out for Ollie McBurnie. I think some of the, talk about dark arts and things away from players' natural ability. I think he would have really got in the heads of a couple of those centre-halves. Sarr, possibly, inexperienced, wouldn't have gone up against strikers of his calibre many times before. And I think he would have left a good impression on the game. There was some I guess, negativity about how many changes he made. But let's put it this way: I think in a few days and weeks' time, and as we talk about the QPR game, that's the priority now, because Hull City have something really to go and strive for, and that is a push for the Premier League. And I think they do need to keep the powder dry with a couple of these players and keep them fresh for what's going to be more important than, one night under the floodlights against Chelsea. Great for the fans to see a Premier League team come into town, but if they want to be playing teams of that calibre nearly every week, they had to be sensible. And I think Sergei was left with not too much choice to make the changes that he made. And like you said, good account of themselves.
Yeah, my feeling on the McBurnie thing, I was maybe a little surprised that he didn't play, but I perfectly understand, having heard the manager after the game, as to why he didn't play him. The key thing is, and I'll ask you in a minute, Baz, is whether he is fit for Saturday or whether there's any worries there. But I felt, from a personal point for McBurnie, I felt sorry for him, because I really wanted to see him play. I wanted to go out and stride on the big stage and book himself a place in the Scotland squad for the World Cup, because they are looking for. I know I bang on about this all the time, but I'm Scottish. I may not sound it, but I was born in Glasgow, and from that sort of point of view, I'd like to see him get to the World Cup. And I thought it was an opportunity. If he'd played against Chelsea, you're on the world stage there, aren't you, to show what you can do and remind people in Scotland what he can do. Didn't happen, so there's no point crying over spilt milk. The bigger question is he fit for Saturday, Baz? Him and Hughes.
Yeah, I was told on Friday night that it was just a precaution. They wanted to rest Hughes, and obviously we know Hughes had got that groin problem that he's been playing with. And both are expected to be fine to start the game against Rangers. And I think it's one of them, isn't it? Look, it's really difficult. If you think back to the last round against Blackburn, he went a lot stronger than what people were expecting. And I think there was a bit of criticism when the team burns his phones off again. There was a bit of criticism about that team that he'd gone so strong at that point, given it was the second week of January. You'd had all the games through Christmas, etc., etc. And look how poorly that first team performed, including McBurnie, by the way, against Blackburn Rovers, who made an awful lot of changes and largely played a second team. So I get your frustration, or not frustration necessarily, disappointment that McBurnie wasn't playing. But again, it's one of them, isn't it? You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you're the manager, if he'd have gone full strength, there would have been a lot of fans that would have applauded that and said, "Go on then, our first team against Chelsea's first team. Let's give it a good go." But yes, there wasn't. He didn't have a game for 8 days after that. So you would say, well, plenty of time to rest. But he's got to be careful. He's had, we know the injury situation at the football club. It's been a problem for more than just this season, but it's been particularly bad this season in terms of not so much the seriousness of the injuries, perhaps like last season when you had 3 ACLs, but the amount and the consistent stream of injuries. Every time you get a player back, you lose another player. And every time a player comes back, sometimes he gets injured. So I think he's got to be really careful. And yes, they could have got through against Chelsea. He could have played a full-strength team against Chelsea, and they could have lost 5-0. There's no guarantees that playing McBurnie, playing Charlie Hughes and going all out would have got them a result either. So it's a really fine balance for him. And I think he has to look at the bigger picture of McBurnie has had his injury problems, has played a lot of football over Christmas since coming back from his calf problem. He's got Gauhart, who hasn't looked particularly enamoured with life since coming back from his injury, so he's still finding his feet. Obviously, Charlie's playing with an injury. He's got you and Paddy McNair and Lewis Kumas, who are relatively new, haven't played. Obviously, Kumas I know played quite a bit for Birmingham, but the other two hadn't played a huge amount. So it's a really difficult one for him. And ultimately, as Fletch says, that the bigger prize here is that City are in the playoffs, a fifth because of results and whatnot. They've seen that gap with other teams playing whittled down by a point to 6. They've got huge games coming up in the next few weeks. 7 games in 21 days, and against teams around them directly around them in the table. So you've got Millwall, you've got Wrexham, you've got Ipswich, you've got Derby, all to come in the next few weeks. they are huge games, and those games, I know we'll talk about it more, but those games will dictate what happens, I think, when push comes to shove. So I think it's a really difficult one. And obviously you've got paying punters, you've got a big TV audience, big, sold out crowd. Everybody wants to see City go and give it a big shot. But it was still a strong team. Let's not make out that you play the under 12s. It was still a really strong team. And had Lewis Kumas been a bit more clinical in front of goal, they probably would have taken the lead. So, but in answer to your question, I know I've gone on a bit. Yes, we expect McBurnie and at least said McBurns then. McBurnie and Charlie Hughes to start against QPR.
Yeah, oh well, that's good news. In fairness to Kumas, I was quite impressed with him. There was maybe a couple of decision-making moments, but I thought he worked really hard.
He did, yeah.
And it gives them, I think it gives them another option. I also think he was unfortunate at 0-0 in the first half when he was adjudged to have held back the Chelsea defender, when the first offence for me was the Chelsea's defender arm across his neck, really, and Kumas might have gone into the box and hopefully took one away. But that's all ifs, smuts and babies. Maybes. If smuts and babies, it sounds like we're on a different podcast now. And, two concerned parents and one grandparent. If muts and babies.
You've just
muts and babies. Now I've thrown a dog in. God. I'm wondering whether I've got the version of Iron Brew here with full sugar in it.
With me in the car parks and you talking about dogging, this is going down a completely different angle. This is.
Can I get us back to reality here? Sorry, if we are if I'm getting to trying to get to a message from James Barber, and I've seen a fair bit of this on Twitter. But James, thank you for this. This message only came in 5 minutes ago to the 1904 club, perfectly timed. Should the club consider relocating home fans back into the northeast corner? For the last few years, the atmosphere has been dull, and even with the excitement that we've had on the pitch this year, it's not channeled back into the stands. Friday's atmosphere felt like a throwback. Well, it does help when you got 4,000 fans in the away end, though they were fairly quiet, I would have to say. What do you think, Fletch? Should they reconsider?
Well, trying to think about all the different times they've chopped and changed. I remember when the MKM first opened and everyone was in the North Stand, and I remember it was just like, it was barren, wasn't it? Because you had teams like Kidderminster, Macclesfield coming to town, and they with small fan bases. I get it. I think if you're on the side of giving the stand back to the whole city, I think you are more inclined to be shouting louder for that argument if you are nearer the away end, whereas the punters at the opposite end towards the south stand probably aren't too fussed. I do, from an aesthetic point of view, and looking at it on telly, if, for example, you've got one of these lunchtime kickoffs or a Friday night, and when they played Wrexham and you've got 2 blocks of seats in the East Stand empty, it's not necessarily a good look. From an atmosphere point of view, I'd probably disagree, because I think the North Stand generally with the fans behind the goal is quite good. So I think it's one of those where I don't think you're going to have a clear consensus, to be honest. I think I remember do you remember, Bernsey, when there was talk about putting the fans in the Upper West Stand at one point, but they couldn't do it because of the gradient, we were told. So they've always chopped and changed to try and find something. But I don't know. I think it all depends on how many home fans turn up as well. Because if you keep them in the corner, North Stand needs to be full to create an atmosphere. But then if you're just segregating them into the North Stand again, are you taking away something from being behind the goal? I don't know, really. It's the only times I go to Hull City anymore seem to be in the Upper West Stand at this point in time, so I'm well away from it. So I think, yeah, it's a good discussion to have. I'm kind of on the fence with it, really. I can't really make a clear argument for either, in my point of view.
Have you got an argument either way?
No, I think stick as you are. I think it's easy to get caught up in the fact that it was a big night, it was a big cup tie, the atmosphere was going to be fervent anyway, and the fans were fantastic, by the way. The fact that they were applauded off at the end of the game, I think the fans could. I think the fans appreciated the effort their team put in, and the fact that they were playing just a team that are playing a different level of football to them. And that is of no disrespect to Hull City, but Chelsea, the world champions, are in the top echelons of the Premier League. They're in the knockout stage of the Champions League. This is, you are playing one of the best teams in the world. And I know Chelsea have changed manager and etc. and all that sort of stuff, but they are one of the best teams in the world. And I think they have such quality. They could have named Liam. Liam must wake up in the morning and wonder. I don't mean this disrespectfully to him, to think how lucky he is and how fortunate he is, because he's in that job for a reason. But for any manager to have that level of quality at their disposal is phenomenal. And he could even send Cole Palmer off with his missus to Dubai for a weekend on the beach, a man-made beach. But I think it's one of them where it's difficult, isn't it? Look, I always think, and I've said this about most clubs, you need the team to be playing well. You need a good away following, a vibrant away following, and something for both sets of fans to go at. I'm not keen on the fans being behind the goal, generally, away fans being behind the goal generally, because I do think that has a big impact. And speaking as somebody obviously that has been at the City Ground a million times, it's always frustrated me that the fans are in the Bridgeford end behind the goal, because that has the atmospherics of the Bridgeford end, for example, are so good for away teams, particularly when they attack that end in the second half. You can often suck that ball into that goal. So I think personally they're better off stuck in the corner. I think what you actually need is you need a good home noise. But I think it's easy when you're playing Chelsea in the FA Cup on telly, under the lights, big game, big mentality, underdog spirit and all that. When you're playing, Blackburn, or you're playing Wrexham and they bring 800 fans on a Saturday afternoon, I think it's a very, very different atmosphere. And those games are difficult. And that's not just at Hull City. I think that's at clubs up and down the country. There are certain games that it's difficult. Bristol City bring 500, 600. I think these games are difficult to generate really good atmospheres. And when it's in the league, again, I've seen it in the Premier League myself. You don't get these raucous atmospheres all that often. I think whatever you do, wherever you put the away fans, I think it's difficult to create that kind of atmosphere it's one-off games ultimately.
I think I'll go for leave it as it is for now, personally.
Yeah.
For the reasons you've stated, Bas, and I can understand why you're a bit on the fence about it, Fletch. But I think personally, I'd stay as it is. It probably makes more sense, and somehow, it does need a bit more atmosphere. It is quiet at times, and I don't know. It's a bit chicken and egg as to whether the team generates the atmosphere or the fans do, because which comes first. But I'd stick as it is. It's a long-winded way of getting there, and I apologise if there's a bit of interference on the mic. I think it's my phone if it gets too close to the mic, as I read out some of the messages that are coming into the 1904 club. Shall we have another one just to
yeah,
and we will. Stephen Haswell says, in terms of who will be available on Saturday, does Sergei know his best midfield and attacking combination to take on a very Jekyll and Hyde QPR? I think he's got some. As I tweeted out this morning, that we're probably in a little more questions than answers phase for City at the moment, as he tries to find the blend. People, new players coming into the squad need a little bit of time to settle in. Perhaps players coming back from injury not quite found the form. So, and we've talked before about the midfield blend and how he gets it right in midfield, where it's so crucial. I mean, Slater's in there, but then who plays alongside Slater is the big question. Fletch, have you got a view?
Depends what he's looking for from the game. I mean, my personal choice would be Lundstram and Slater. I have to be honest, I'm not particularly keen on. After every game, I look at Amir Hadjimetovic's numbers and things, and I think we discussed it against Chelsea, and it feels like this is going to sound really disrespectful, but I think he's trying to be what John Michael Seri was. Now, John Michael Seri is obviously a luxury player. And I think he likes to play at that pace where he could, if he could put slippers on to pass the ball around, he would. But sometimes there's been moments in games where that style hasn't suited Hull City. I think back to the Middlesbrough game where they didn't get their midfield right, and they just went, bang, bang, bang around them and just played around them, and they couldn't get near them. So I think energy and hard work and a bit of gusto and a bit of agitation, if you like, to the opposition as well. Now, like we've said for years about how I've always wanted Hull City to be a bit naughtier and a bit meaner in the midfield. I think Lundstram and Slater offer a good pair in that regard. I think it all depends what you're looking for. If you want to set up for a game where you want to dominate possession and move the ball about with a bit more tempo, maybe you chuck Amir Djimitovic in there. Crooks is a bit like Lundstram as well, isn't he? He can break stuff up. He's hungry. So, yeah, it's an interesting choice. I'd probably go Lundstram and Slater at this present moment, but it's not a clear and obvious choice from my position.
Bernsey. Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And we've talked about this. We've talked about this before. I'm wrestling with. I want to see more from John Lundstram. I think we need to see more from him. Yes, I know he's coming back from. He's missed 3 months, and that's not easy for a footballer to be out for that length of time and come back in at this stage of the season. But I think we need to be seeing more from him personally. We know that he can dominate games. We know that he can dominate the midfield battle. We know he's got the ability to move the ball quickly and be box to box. You think back to early season when he scored that wonderful goal against Southampton, not running onto the Ollie McBurnie's knockdown from Louis Coyle's ball over the top, or not ball over the top, but ball into McBurnie from deep. He's the player that is recently has disappointed me a bit because I just don't think we've seen enough from him. But as I say, I do caveat that in fairness to Lunny with he's not been fully fit and he's finding his legs again. Amir thought he showed some nice touches in the first half against Chelsea. He knocked the ball around well, but for me, he's such an inconsistent player. He's so 1 minute he looks terrific, and the next minute he ambles around, and the game just passes him by, and he gets caught in possession. We've seen it at times this season where we've conceded goals because he's won the ball well, he's turned, and then he's lost it instead of just playing a simple 5-yard ball to get the ball away. Or move it up the line. So, Slater is the one that is the best is the best one out there. They need Matazo back, but quite what he's going to look like when he comes back, we don't know because he's been out for now pretty much it's coming up a year. Was at the end? I think it was the back end of February last year when he did his ACL down in Cardiff. He's nearing a return, but we know from experience with Mo Baloumi and Liam Miller. When players come back from ACLs, there's generally, a trade-off. You get them back for a couple of weeks, you breed them in for maybe a month, and then they do the hamstring. So that doesn't happen with Elliott, but he's been out for so long, and he's had 2 or 3 setbacks along the way. So we'll have to wait and see. So you can't put any kind of expectation on him going forward. Burnsy, you're wagging vigorously again.
No, if you're only listening to this, then you've got a mental image of something that's not going on. All I'm doing is wiggling my pen in the air to signify I'd like to make a point. My only point, just as we were discussing the midfield there, are Lundstram and Hadzimetovic mutually exclusive? Could you not play the three of them in midfield? Just a thought.
Yeah, you could do.
Don't all rush at once.
Yeah, you could do. And they've experimented with pushing Amir a bit further forward into that kind of, not necessarily the number 10 role, occasionally the number 10 role, but when they play without a number 10, but a little bit more advanced. And it worked brilliantly away at Southampton, for example. But I'm just not sure, really. I think. And I know I'm reiterating a point we've made previously, but it's a point because we're talking about it. It's worth making again that Matt Crooks is a hugely influential player in this team, and he's a big miss, and we're not going to see him for another couple of weeks probably, unless he's suddenly had a miraculous recovery. We're expecting him the start of March, but yeah, look, he's wrestling, isn't he? He's admitted himself, Sergei, that. He's not found the right blend in there yet. He's not found the right system that complements each other that gives him the control and the balance in midfield. And that's causing them a problem, because so many times this season, it's difficult to say too much against Chelsea for obvious reasons, because whatever they played against Chelsea, they're playing against a team that are on 4 or 5 levels above them, whoever Hull City played. But it is a recurring problem. It has been the one kind of sticking point throughout the season. Defensively, they've changed things. They've looked relatively more solid. Yes, I know. Again, they conceded 4 against Chelsea, but I think we need to take that out of and put context around that of who you're playing. But they have improved defensively. Going forward, we know they're a real threat, and down the sides. But I think in that central area, it's a real problem for him, and he's not. I don't think apart from Regan, I don't think anybody's grabbing him by the scruff of the neck and saying, "Pick me, because I'm going to play with Regan." He's got a problem, and I think Lundstrom is the key. Lundstrom needs to find his feet again, find some rhythm, and start to really show why he was such a big signing, a big influence at the beginning of the season.
Fletcher, any further thoughts on that? Go on.
Looking at the numbers of what they've churned out this season, depending on what people want, if you want 2 midfielders who are going to intercept the ball and break it up, you pick Lundstrom and Slater according to the data. If you want tackles on top of that, you then throw Crooks in there as well, because you've got 3 players buzzing around who are going to basically run into everybody and try and cause carnage. The thing that I'm finding slightly perplexing looking at the numbers is Hadzimetovic, whether it be passing, tackling, intercepting, he's not in the top 2 or top 3 of any of them. So Hadzimetovic, in terms of his accuracy in short passes, Crooks and Slater are better. Lundstrom and Slater and Crooks have got more interceptions than him. Crooks has got more tackles than him. And I imagine, we know that Regan Slater is like he's a battery pack, isn't he? He just doesn't stop running. So I'm slightly leaning now towards adding Crooks to my trio, but I'm still undecided on where I'd place them all, whether I had Lundstrom and Slater behind Crooks, or the combination of where they would play and what the duties would be, I'm struggling with.
Let us, mentioning Slater, we're getting quite a lot to the 1904 club about Regan Slater. So let me mention a few people who've mentioned Slater. Carl Butcher says Slater didn't look out of place against Chelsea. In fact, I thought he was the best midfielder out of both teams, says Carl Butcher. Carl, thank you for that. Harry Tal says, think the recent run of results shows how crucial Crooks is to this team. We've discussed that before on the 1904 club.
Bernsey, just repeat that last question, because I don't know what happened, but it got lost. So if you can just repeat what you said to the last question, please.
Okay. Think the recent run of results shows how crucial Crooks is to this team. Lundstrom not been at the races since his return. Slater, my player of the season so far, says Harry Tal. Hopefully offer him a new contract before he's tempted away by the likes of Sheffield United. And where are we? There's one more on Regan Slater. Hull is massive. Send us a note saying, how likely is Slater going to get a new contract? Let him write any number on it and get it sorted. Where are you on Slater? What's happening on Slater, Baz?
I think they've got to get it done. I spoke to the manager. Let's first. He's out of contract in the summer. The club do have a 12-month option on it, similar to what they had with John Egan and Louis Coyle. Obviously, Coyle signed a new long-term deal earlier this month, and it was announced at the back end of last week, just before the Chelsea game. I think when I spoke to Regan a few weeks ago, he'd heard nothing. But I spoke to Sergei about it a few days ago, and he was unequivocal that the club have got to tie him down. I think they will. I think Regan would like that. I think there are plans in place to get that done. They've obviously got the protection of that option year, which they will. I think they will activate. I don't think there's any question about that. They will activate that option year. But Regan deserves a new contract. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Again, we've said this before, that he started out the season by the manager's admission of 4th or 5th choice. He's now, without any question, the first name on the team sheet, certainly in the midfield area of the pitch. and his performances have been very good. And then I agree with the correspondent there that he didn't look out of place against Chelsea. There was that moment in the first half where second half where Chelsea were. That was the first half, yeah. When Chelsea were attacking, he won the ball, a really good tackle on the edge of his box, surged forward, played it forward, and got City going. And they should have, I think it ended up with Kumas missing a chance, or Miller shooting, one of the two anyway. But he's been very good, and I think they've got to get him tied down to a new deal. Look, the Sheffield United link is an obvious one. Wilder knows him. Regan is from Sheffield. He's a Sheffield United boy. The club is in his heart. Would it surprise me if United, realistically, because they're probably going to be in the Championship next season unless something crazy happens, would it surprise me if United came in for him in the summer? If both clubs are still in this division? Absolutely not. But City need to protect themselves, because no longer is Regan a £50,000 player. Regan is a very, very good Championship player. He's played well over 200 games now. He at the risk of putting the commentator's curse on it, he's always fit, very rarely unavailable with injury or suspension. His temperament's excellent. He's a grafter. He's everything you want in a player. The only thing and Regan would admit this, I think, that he needs to add more goals to his game. We saw a wonderful header at Birmingham. We saw that wonderful strike against Swansea a few weeks ago. For a player that gets in the positions like Regan does, with the engine that he's got, he should be getting 10 goals a season from that midfield role without any question. Maybe I'm being a bit optimistic, maybe 8, but I certainly think 8 to 10 for a player of his quality is realistic with the attributes that he's got. So they have to get him tied down. I've got no doubt that they will. There's been a lot going on. Everything takes time. Regan rightly will be saying, when they have discussions, I suspect Regan will be saying, look, I've had a couple of contract extensions since I've been here. I've been here for 6 years. I've played 200 games. I'm always available. I'm always there. Every manager that's been here has picked me. Give me a deal that reflects that level of Championship quality. And if you're Regan, absolutely, you have that right to push that. Louis Coyle has just got himself a 3.5-year deal at the age of 30. If Louis Coyle is deserving of that type of deal, I would argue that Regan is in that bracket, personally.
Fletch?
I'd certainly agree with that, Baz. Yeah, I think Regan has done plenty enough to justify getting a new contract, and they have that safeguard, as you say, of the 12-month extension. The question I would maybe put to you two is that if it is the scenario where Sheffield United do pick up the phone and say they want to put a bid in for Hull City, what price tag do you put on Regan Slater? Because I think they've got to consider that as well. If clubs in the Championship or elsewhere think that there's a very good midfielder there who's worth a certain amount of money, the Hull City need to be sensible, and because the financial numbers in the background still haven't gone back to a very positive footing. They're getting better, but do they have to take that into consideration as well?
That's an interesting question about value, and I hate it in the Championship when you're trying to value players, because it's how long's a piece of string, isn't it? As Liam used to say. I think for a player at a good age like Regan is, that's played 200 games, I don't think you accept anything less than 4 or 5 million. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if that's too high, too low, but at his age, 26, 27. I think he's a really good age. He's played a lot of games. I think that would be reasonable. I'm not sure because of the goal situation. If he was knocking in 15 a season, I think it elevates it significantly higher. But he's coming into his prime, and I still think he's got room for improvement. So I don't like putting values on players, because I think it's a really hard thing to do. Burnsy?
Yeah, I think it is a hard thing to do. Though if I was Regan Slater's agent, and I don't know whether he listens to the 1904 Club, they should do, because there's a lot of good stuff here. I'd be thinking, well, Mr. Chairman, Baz Cooper says on the 1904 Club that Regan's worth 4 or 5 million quid. I take it our new contract of 3.5 years will reflect that in Regan's wages. So I'm
I
not
know
going to put
nothing. I know
I'm not going to
nothing.
put a valuation on it. Yeah, but he's worth a new contract. His performances deserve it. If there is interest from Sheffield United, then I would take that both personally from the player's point of view and from the club's point of view as being flattering, because they've developed him. Because Sheffield United let him go as a youngster, and he's developed, and he's been excellent, and he is one of the first names on the team sheet. They've got the cushion of the 1 year option, but they had the cushion of that 1 year option with Louis Coyle as well, didn't they? And have given him maybe a longer contract than many would have expected at 3.5 years for a 30-year-old. Credit to Louis' agent for that one. And, whether they've got long-term plans for him, I don't know whether he's doing his coaching badges or anything like that. Louis is a big influence on the dressing room. He's a big influence on the club. So whether there's plans beyond his playing career or not, I genuinely don't know. But going back to Regan, where's it come from? This story of Sheffield United's interest, as the Sheffield United manager Chris Wilder actually said something? Has somebody asked him in a press conference and he said something, or has he done the usual? Sorry, I don't talk about other clubs' players.
I think it's one of those where it's come from. Was it Sports Boom? I think I put something out yesterday, but right. I think it would make sense. But what I would say is that I think City have got to be mindful that they also, helped him become the player he is. As you said, they've improved him. They've given him a platform to play an awful lot of games at the championship, and I think that has to reflect also if every player has a price, don't they? No player in the land doesn't have a price. So, and I think when you are putting a value on a player, that has to be reflected. The amount of work you've put in with that player has to be reflected. The amount of games, the durability of that player has to be reflected. And Regan, he's played 200 games for City from that loan spell in League One to now. And I think you have to bear in mind that City will want good money, but we know that if they remain a championship team in the summer, they are going to have to sell players, whether that's Charlie Hughes, Ivor Panda, or Regan Slater, or anybody else for that matter. I think we would expect that Charlie would go if they don't get promoted. I think that's they've talked openly about that as the owner and the manager, etc. So that is going. They are going to have to balance the books if they were to get £5 million for Regan Slater. I think that becomes a deal that is difficult to turn down because it's good money. You've got Darko JB there. You've got young Cathal McCarthy coming through. You've obviously got other. You have decisions to make in the summer about Amir and John Lundstrom, but you've still got Crooks. You've got one or two others as well, and they'll go and strengthen. So I don't think it's something you should fear necessarily, but ultimately you've got to protect as a football club. Footballers are, like it or not, are commodities, and you have to. If a player's going to go, you've got to do what you've got to protect yourself and make sure you get the best deal. And tying him down to a long-term contract, 3.5, 4 years, gives City that protection. It doesn't mean that he's going to stay for 3.5 to 4 years. So suddenly Sheffield United, he could sign a 3.5 year deal tomorrow. Sheffield United could come in the summer and offer £6 million, and he's gone. And I think if that was the deal, you shake hands and go, Regan, we're just talking hypothetically here, but I think for Regan that would be a very difficult move to turn down, to go back to Sheffield United and go back as an experienced Championship player that's going to play at Bramall Lane week in, week out, and City pocket a huge amount of money. It helps them financially, and it gives them some wriggle room in the market in the summer to go and strengthen again. And they've got, I think, Cathal McCarthy is going to be a fabulous, fabulous player, a wonderful player going forward, and I would have no qualms about him stepping up and being the next Regan Slater, but I don't want Regan Slater to go before anybody gets on my back.
Fletcher, I'm going to come to you. I just wanted to say that I know the country has a bit of a problem with inflation, but Baz has gone from 4 million to 6 million quid in the blink of an eye. There, good job you're not in the government, Baz.
I'm like Kwasi Kwarteng here.
Well, just to give you an idea of how much you should value him at, if you were using Sheffield United's midfielders as a yardstick, he's valued on the various like stat websites the same as Andre Brooks, who's got 5 goals and 2 assists and has played nearly every game in Sheffield United's midfield. Conscious that is also the same as Tom Davis, who hasn't had much game time. He's also valued around the same as Nicholas Madsen of QPR and Jason Malumbi of West Brom in terms of age and position, if that means anything to anyone. And Chris Wilder
stick
gave
a
him his
figure on it
senior
then, Fletch.
and Chris Wilder gave him his
Stick a
senior
figure on
debut.
it then. What are all these transfer sites saying he's worth?
Between 3 million and 3.5.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
But how they calculate it, I don't know. Whether the agents do that, I'm not sure, because this website has like agent information and things on. So
I'm sure they'll sort it out. He's done really well. He's come from, what was he, probably 5th choice midfielder, and I think there was some at the club thinking, well, we'll move him on, and he's made himself indispensable at this point. Hull Matt says to the 1904 club, Akintola, what's happening? He seems to be linked to more countries every week: Turkey, USA, Slovenia, or is he staying in sunny? Clarity, please, 1904 club. Oof, that's a first for us. Clarity. No, I'm only teasing. You get clarity on this program. What have you got, Baz? Is what's happening with Akintola?
I think they're still trying to find him a move, aren't they? But if that doesn't happen, he's been training. He'll stay and be part of the squad. But to be honest with you, I'd be tempted to keep him around, because you just never know with how this season's gone with injuries. You know, if Liam Miller gets an injury, or his form has not been amazing recently. If Hirakawa gets a knock, they've got, yes, Balumi might come back towards the end of the season for the odd 20-minute, half an hour cameo here and there. But I think it's we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next week or so. But I think options are going to start to run out, aren't they? So we'll have to wait and see with that. But we're with the manager on Thursday, so we'll get an update on where things are at on Thursday.
Rich Lutkin says to the 1904 club, playoffs should be the aim now. Let's be honest, with the financial restrictions and amount of injuries, that would be an incredible season. Let's lose those insane expectations and get back to having an underdog mentality. How long until Matazo and the tree are back? Midfield looks very light. Well, we've discussed that. Fletch, automatics gone? Personally, I don't think they have.
They haven't numerically, but I do wonder with injuries if Hull City have got the legs in comparison to everyone else to maintain the fight. I mean, they've proved it, haven't they, in the last few weeks, that even with bumps and scrapes along the way, they can churn out results. I think they've just got to look after themselves. There's going to be that. I'm desperately trying not to sound like a football manager and hang my hat on it, but I don't want to come across. I just think that the teams around them with lots of firepower. I mean, Coventry and Middlesbrough had a good scrap last night, and Coventry deservedly winning in the end. Had you right getting the hat trick. Momentum is a strange thing. If Hull City can beat QPR, everyone's suddenly thinking it's on again. But playoffs is still way above the expectations that many people would have thought last year, and they just need to keep that underdog mentality. I think they're a team that prefer being chasing rather than being chased, if you like. So if they get in the top 2, phenomenal, brilliant achievement. But playoffs certainly wouldn't be a bad thing. I can't really call it yet, if I'm being brutally honest. I would like to think they can stay in the playoffs. I hope they don't run out of steam and drop out altogether.
But isn't the manager and the players, Baz, or aren't the manager and the players saying, we've got to crack on now and make sure we get the playoffs, and they're not giving up on automatic promotion? They've been sort of quite bullish about it, which personally I think is a good thing. Yeah,
I mean, after Coventry dispatched Middlesbrough last night, I think so they're 7 points off Borough in second with a game in hand. So, but that game in hand, admittedly, is away at Ipswich in a couple of weeks. So, look. I've never really thought the automatic promotion places are realistic for this team, personally. the fact we're having the conversation again is a huge mark of progress of where they've come this season. I personally don't think they're at that level, if I'm honest. And that's not to criticise anything. Their form has been superb all season. They are, by the league table standards, at the minute, on the 5th best team in the league, or joint 4th best team in the league. But I would rule nothing out, because they've got 15 games to go. 4 of the next 7 are away from home, which I think helps them, because playing at home so far in this calendar year in 2026 has been a bit of a struggle. They've been a bit stodgy at home. They've not yet found a way of playing at home that gets them enough results. Yes, they beat Swansea, but I think we would all agree they were a bit fortunate to beat Swansea based on the second half. They got themselves 2 in front with McBurnie's penalty and that cracker from Regan, and then rode their luck massively in the second half. 1 or 2 other home performances. The Stoke game, they weren't great, although they did hit the ball a couple of times and could have won a tight game 2-1. As it was, they lost it 1-0, but that's the Championship. They weren't great against Watford, but they got a point. And obviously, we saw what happened against Bristol City in the last league game. So I think they've got to find a way over the next 2 games of getting a minimum of 4 points. Then they have to, I think QPR, with respect to the manager, he set his stall out with his team against Chelsea, clearly focusing on QPR and the games thereafter. So they have to beat QPR. I think there's an element of relative pressure on that game, particularly with Derby to come next Tuesday night. And we know that Derby, they've obviously just beat Swansea, but they had 2 attempts on goal from set pieces and scored 2 goals against Swansea. Swansea did basically to Derby what they did to City, dominated the game without getting anything from it. So they've got to be really wary of Derby, who away from home are very, very good and are lethal from set pieces and don't need chances in the game. And we saw that in the Derby game in the final home game of last season. Derby offered absolutely nothing in an attacking sense in the game whatsoever. Got 1 free kick from an Alfie Jones foul, bang, Nat Phillips at the back post scored. And you've lost the game 1-0 with 5 minutes to go. So they have to be really careful. But these next 2 games are massive, massive games with them being at home. They need to get some momentum back in their season at home, because it could cut if they're not careful. And they have got that 6-point cushion, and that is a good cushion to have at any stage. But that 6-point cushion, if they're not careful, given we've got a 3-game week coming up, that could very quickly evaporate to nothing or 1 or 2 points. So they've got to go on the front foot against QPR. QPR are just, we know what QPR are. You never know what you're going to get with them. Well, 4 wins in 16 away from home, 1 win in 6 in the last 6 league games away. They were absolutely pulverised by Blackburn at Loftus Road, ball down the middle every time, caught them out. So I'd be looking to try and exploit that on Saturday. But that, for me, I think if you've got any hope or aspirations of being a top 6 team this season, QPR at home, when you've not won in 2, and they've won 1 in 6, is a must win. It is a must win at this stage of the season for me.
Fletch?
I don't think I can disagree with what Baz says there at the end. I think, if these next 2 games put you on 60 points after 33 games, you're just below 2 points a game, which is a phenomenal achievement for the football club from where they were last year. But yeah, I still don't pivot away from it. I think there's still plenty of twists and turns along the way yet, and let's see what happens. I think they've got to be good at what they've been good at so far this season. That's working hard and taking chances when they do come along.
Yeah, I agree. But I do feel this game does have a whiff of crucial about it, because they've missed the opportunity to really kick on with the previous 2 home games. So now you get a bit of pressure begins to build. Confidence gets nibbled away at, maybe not in the squad, but maybe amongst the fans. Luke Bedford disagrees, says to the 1904 Club. Wouldn't say it's crucial. Think I'd like the team to regroup and settle in some of the new players. Grind out a decent team display, 0-0 or 1-0 will do. Also think Sergei needs to go back to 4-2-3-1 for now, as it most suits our style. I'd give Miller a rest, says Luke, also seen as we have cover. And Dan Adams to the 1904 Club says, really need a positive result against QPR. It's this time of the season when teams really put runs together, and I don't want us to throw away what we've worked so hard to have currently. I hope the pitch doesn't lead to us not securing a playoff place either. And Jim Cam, just on the pitch, will we have to change our game considering the game will be played on a mud bath? Well, will it? It's, here come the annual blame the rugby league messages. And, I don't think that's fair. And the pitch has been playing all right. So there is a game, though, another game. What is it, Thursday night for Rovers in the World Club Challenge in the Rugby League?
Yeah, there is,
on
yeah.
it. But, yeah. You
can't.
They have to cope
dates
with that.
Wise, it just doesn't. Dates wise, that argument just doesn't work, because
I know.
How can you blame rugby league when there's been, as of Thursday, 2 matches on it?
Look, and also, I know it's the age-old discussion, but you speak to anybody that it's all right having an opinion, but you speak to the people that know, the ground staff, and people that work on, that this is their job, their life. They will always say that the rugby doesn't cause as much problem to the pitch as the football does. So you can take, fans listening to this can take that however way they want, and they can make their own aspersions by watching football, by watching rugby league or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, the people that know what they're talking about, rather than just watch it with a naked eye, and every now and then say that the rugby causes less damage to the playing surface than the football. So, but ultimately, we are where we are. It's a ground, like it or not, it's a ground that is owned by the people of Hull, and it's for 2 clubs to share. And everybody has an opinion on that, and everybody has their own verdict and what they think should or should not happen. But at the minute, it's a ground shared by Hull FC and Hull City, and both have got to share it. And the ground staff work their socks off to try and give the football team and the rugby team the best possible playing surface. And you also need. There's a lot of pitches around the country that have been struggling, but when we are having the incessant rain that we are non-stop for what feels like forever, there's a limit to what you can do. You can have all the fancy equipment in the world to try and create fake sun and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately, if you're pouring litres and litres of water on it day in, day out, and then you're trying to play a football match on it or a rugby match, it's gonna be hard. It is going to be hard. You're just not going to get a bowling green. Yeah, you might look at. I saw the state of the Emirates a couple of days ago. Awful pitch, and all they've got is they play. Okay, Arsenal ladies play there, but there's not a huge amount of traffic on it. And I've seen other Premier League pitches where they have one Premier League game on it, and they're not great. So Hull City in the Championship, it's just not. I think it's a really hard one, and it's difficult for everybody. I don't think there's a right answer. It's unfortunate, but hopefully, if we can start to get a bit of better weather knocking around, it might help it for everybody.
Okay, well said, Basil. Yeah, he's been called worst. Luke Womack says to the 1904 club, got to be a must-win game for me at QPR, as is the Derby game. This run of home games could knacker our entire season if we don't get a couple more wins. Yeah, I can see what you're saying, Luke. Thank you for that. On the fans thing and where they should be, Paul Jarvis says to us, about time our supporters were all together again. Put the away fans in the northwest corner and recreate the atmosphere like the Chelsea game. And there was a question I wanted to ask that we've not discussed, but it's sort of current. Tony Silver says, at some point, I'd like you all to discuss my idea to make the playoffs fair, please. 3rd place should wait at Wembley. 6th should play at 5th's ground. Winner plays at 4th's. Winner goes to Wembley. It's an interesting idea, Tony. But if you're waiting without a game for a while, how does that affect your fitness? And the other thing on the playoffs, it looks, I get the suspicion that the clubs will vote for an extended playoffs. You got a thought, Fletch? Would that work? It will mean more money, more drama, more excitement, but will it dilute it? Should we leave as it is?
I think for League 2 and League 1 it would work. for the Championship, it would then turn the Premier League into more of a closed shop. With all due respect, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, would Preston, Wrexham, Millwall, Hull, Derby, Bristol, would any of them cope if they got promoted from 7th or 8th in the playoff places based on the current makeup of the Championship? I really don't think they would. And I think, I think you'd be looking at more teams getting pasted week in, week out in the Premier League because of the financial arsenal that they've got. You'd have to lace them with cash from going up through the playoffs, to which point first and second would turn around and go, well, where's the credibility in actually winning the league anymore? Because third place would get a sack full of money. What's the fee now? Is it £170 million, something crazy like that it's been recently? Maybe even higher than that. So I don't think from a Championship point of view it works. I think from the other divisions, League One into the Championship, it works because the chasm is nowhere near as large. And it also is a slap in the face right down at the other end of the pyramid for non-league, because you get 2 teams coming into the Football League and they should be given the right to get as many teams that progress through the divisions now as well. So,
says our Scarborough correspondent for the BBC.
Yeah, 2 divisions. Don't matter for them, they're in National League North. But for 2 divisions, it would work. I just think the way the Premier League is now, it's becoming more and more of a closed shop. And I just don't think it would work for, if you do from the lottery of, let's say, the bottom end of the playoffs, if you were lucky enough to win, you're in an uphill battle before you even kicked a ball financially. You'd have to sign 15, 20 players.
Baz, they are going to vote for it, aren't they, to extend the playoffs, because it gives more teams more opportunity, whatever it does to the competition, and a chance for a few more quid. And the broadcasters don't like it because there's more jeopardy.
100% they're going to vote for it, because for that reason, it gives more teams more chance of getting promoted. What I would say, to counter Fletcher's point, and I agree with him, but to play devil's advocate, you could have a team that finishes 6th and they could be essentially level on points with 7th, 8th and 9th and only in there on goal difference. So, I always think it's iffy when the team that finishes 6th goes up. If they're like 30 points behind the team that finishes 3rd, a bit like we saw with Sunderland and Sheffield United, to be fair. But look how well Sunderland, and again, I'm speculating, but I dare say Sunderland have fared better in the Premier League than Sheffield United would have done if they'd have gone up 3rd, and given how close they were to 1st and 2nd. So last year. So I don't know. My gut feeling is don't change. Look, there would have been, if you go back when the playoffs were first talked about, no doubt there was a lot of scepticism, and the introduction of the playoffs has probably been the best thing to happen to football in the Football League, because of what it's created, the opportunities it's given, the way it's extended seasons, created so much interest, moments. It's changed. The playoffs have changed lives, irrefutably. I'm not sure this is a good thing personally, but I don't feel strongly enough on it, because of how successful the playoffs have been. We could be sat here in 10 years' time going, wasn't that a wonderful idea to extend the playoffs, because it's great, the drama it's created. And I don't know, Charlton Athletic have got into the playoffs, finished 8th, and have now been in the Premier League for the last 8 years, and are now in Europe. So you just don't know how it's going to go. And as I say, you could end up with 5th and 6th being only a point or 2 ahead of the teams that finished 10th. That's the Championship is that mental that you wouldn't rule that out either. But I don't know. But like I say, I'm not really that bothered about it personally. I just think it's going to happen, and it'll be what it'll be, won't it? And they will vote for it, because as you say, Burnsy, the amount of money that it'll bring in, that opens up the chance of more teams getting in the Premier League, and that is ultimately the holy grail. Everybody wants to be in the Premier League, and Hull City no different. Hull City, if you'd have said to Hull City at the start of the season, you could finish 8th and you'll be in the playoffs, you'd have gone, bloody hell, yeah, we'll take that. And even now, if somebody said to you there's going to be an extension of the playoffs, 8th, it guarantees you to get in a version of the playoffs, you go, I'll take that, because that's a massive comfort blanket if things go a bit pear-shaped in the final couple of games.
Yeah. Is it just to correct me or put me right or put me well informed on this, is it due to come in next season?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to. Yeah, that's the plan, isn't it? Once they vote to approve it, that'll be brought in. So we'll see. We'll see. I suspect it will happen, though.
Does it create a net, though,
well,
just to finish the point? Does it create a bigger net for relegation sides? So if you go down, you've got more places to fight for. And then you've got, there's a risk that some clubs, I look at the Championship, I think clubs like Stoke and QPR, now obviously we don't know the ins and outs of every club, but there are some clubs in each division that are stagnant. So for them, it would be of a benefit because they've got something closer to reach for. But the other side of the argument is if you get relegated, there's less jeopardy. You could reinvest if you want a certain amount of money and you've got a shot at the playoff places to see if you get promoted. So you could end up having teams just going up and down and people being left behind because that already happens.
Yeah, it does exactly. But I don't know. You look at Ipswich this season. Ipswich, with the quality of their squad, with what they've spent, they should be 15 points clear at the top of the league, home and hosed, feet up on the beach already. And football just doesn't always work like that, does it? And that's you look at Leicester. I mean, Leicester in the bottom three could feasibly be relegated to League One. A team that won the Premier League in 15-16. So, and Southampton have had not a great season, but they are starting to find some form. They're in the mix for the playoffs now. But I don't know. I'm not overly keen on it, if I'm honest. But I also understand why everybody's going to vote for it because what it creates, the opportunity. It's giving teams that perhaps if you're. Look, factor it in. Let's go back 2 years when City missed out. City finished 7th. If this new system was in place, City would have been in a playoff for a playoff, wouldn't they? And we'd have gone, oh, well, disappointing we didn't finish 6th, but we've got a second chance. We've got a second bite of the cherry. So in that point, you'd be up. If you're associated with Hull City 2 years ago, you're absolutely buzzing, aren't you?
Yeah, I think as well, depending on these playoff games. You can have more lunchtime kickoffs, more night games to fill more TV slots, generates more money, and then it stays at the top of the tree as it has done for the last few years, and it should get funneled down better.
It should, but we could beer all after.
We could.
They'll all vote for it. I'm voting for this for the end of this edition of the 1904 Club.
It's not been that bad, has it?
Clock. Yeah, no, it's been good. I've enjoyed it as always. Thank you to Tony for the question about the playoffs. It got us discussing it. And thank you to everybody that's sent questions to the 1904 Club. We'll be back next week. We'll be Baz after, hopefully, and I do think it's fairly crucial, a win over QPR, who are not in good form. Yeah, absolutely. The first of 7 games in 21 days. Of course, QPR on Saturday, then Derby County on Tuesday night at the MKM, 2 home games, and then the long trip to Portsmouth. 12:30 kickoff this weekend against QPR, as it is at Portsmouth next weekend. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Fletch, lovely to see your pretty face.
Oh, likewise, Baz. Likewise.
A few people say that. Burnsy, as always, thanks for your time, and we'll be back again soon. Up the Tigers!